Hi, Graham Tribe members. Thank you so much for joining me. Linda Eyre is joining me this week to have a conversation about how grandmothers can really build strong bonds with their grandchildren. Now, if Linda's name sounds familiar to you, Linda Eyre and her husband Richard write an article for Grand Magazine. They've also got the great podcast Eyres on the Road, as well as Values Parenting, where they have been able to influence not only parenting, but also grandparenting since the 1980s. You are going to be in for a treat because Linda and I have just a blast catching up as well as talking about all the fun family activities that she and Richard have with their grandchildren, but also the adult children as well. So stay tuned. After this word from our sponsor, we're going to dive right into a conversation that's sure to make you smile.
Hey, grandparents! If the grandkids haven't seen WikiSticks, here's your chance to be a hero yet again. WikiSticks are perfect for hours of open-ended creative fun. And here's a sneaky tip. Visit our website, wikisticks.com, and see all the fun things you can make, practice a little, and then voila, dazzle the grandkids. They'll join right in, and you'll all have tons of fun, showing each other the cool and creative things you can make with WikiSticks.
Linda Eyre, welcome to the Grand Tribe podcast. I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you, Greg. This is exciting. I know you've done some things with Richard, but I am so excited to be with you. The cool grandpa is just pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. Now you're making me blush over here. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to dive in because I've talked to Richard over on my other show, but I want to talk to you about the grandma relationship and some of the things that you do. I know July is heavy for the Eyre clan to get together and do activities, but you do some specific grandma type activities with the kids. And I'd love for you to let's talk about the cruise that you guys went on.
Well, yeah, first of all, I divide my little groups up into 3 or 4 or 5 at the most. And I just get to have their 100% attention. And when they get to a certain age, this little group gets to go on what we call a motorhome trip. So it started out being a real motorhome trip because our friend from years ago, George Romney, many people, maybe some grandparents will remember, Mitt's dad, said he took his kids on a motorhome trip every year, all across the country, out to their home country and back to the West Coast and back to Michigan. Anyway, we thought that's such a great idea. We're going to do that. So ever since, we have been taking our kids 3 and 4 at a time. And sometimes we started with a motorhome. We went up to Yellowstone Park and had a great time. Then another time the last one we did a big car, because we didn't have time to get a motorhome. And then this year we decided we're going to just take them on a cruise. At our age at this point, a cruise sounded really easy as far as food and all that kind of stuff. So we took 4 of our granddaughters, ages 12, 13, 14, 15. And one of them has celiac, so we had to be really careful with her food, and they had special recipes, special things for her and so on. But we had so much fun getting to know those kids. Richard did come along, even though it was a Grammie Camp group. But we just got to know them. It was just so fun to see them interact with each other for not just a few hours, but for days. Well, it was only 3 days. Let me tell you, this one was a short one. 4 by the time we get back and forth, but 3 nights. But we had so much fun with those girls and just interacting with them. And there were things on board that they could get, and they were so careful with their money. They had a little allowance, and they were so careful. And some of them weren't careful. They just spent it right away. And then we took them shopping in Mexico because we stopped in Mexico. And what they each chose to have was just so interesting. And everybody was suggesting their ideas. And anyway, that nobody quarreled or anything. It was amazing. But the main thing was to get to know those kids. And you really do. When you eat 3 meals a day with them, you talk with them. We had so much fun. We tried to get them to ask questions of people. As there were a lot of tattoos, we said, why don't you just go to say to somebody, I really like your tats. Well, can you tell me what they're about? And there always is a story, but I'm not sure they were brave enough to do that. But they did ask some questions, and they did some things, and we just had a great time.
Well, that sounds awesome. And I love the fact that you had those teenagers that were kind of in that early to mid teenage range, because I bet the cruise for them, especially if they had time apart from you guys, was fantastic. They could go and explore, but they couldn't necessarily, completely run off.
And they couldn't get lost. Exactly. And Richard said, okay, let's do this. We'll have breakfast together, lunch and dinner, and then the other hours, except when there were shows, we did the shows together, but they just went off and they learned a lot about each other while they did it too. So it's a delight to do.
That's fantastic. And were there any, I guess, like special connection moments that you had with those granddaughters?
Wow, just so many. The last day, we didn't get the announcement. We were supposed to get off the boat by 10 o'clock. They said 12 o'clock, the boat's empty. We thought, okay, we can empty it by 12. By 8:30, the porter came to me and said, Mrs. Eyre, are you just about ready to be out? And we said, oh, no, we're staying for a while. Said, oh, no, everybody has to be out of their rooms by 8:30. I tell you what, those girls jumped to the moment. They jumped to the moment. They got up, they got their stuff ready, they got out of there. One of them had lost the bottom half of her swimsuit. She said, I'm not leaving until I find it. And the other two grabbed her and said, we have to go, Mila, we have to go. And so it was just so fun to see how they negotiated all that. And then, of course, she found it in her suitcase when she got home. Yeah.
Well, that's funny. That's great watching them. Yeah, I mean, great problem solving skills, right? At what point do you just kind of cut your losses and you figure something's replaceable, and what do you do for the good of the group?
Yeah, exactly. They really worked out some fun things. It was great.
Now, one thing that I know that you've been doing for a while are these Grammie Camps. And can you talk to me a little bit about what a Grammie Camp looks like?
Interestingly, there is an article in Grand Magazine for the summer issue on Grammie Camps. And Christine asked me to do it, and I was delighted to. We did sent some pictures of the things that we did and so on. But I love getting my kids together. Again, these are small groups. And I don't know, a lot of grandmothers like to go out and play tennis with them or cook bread with them, but I love music and art, and I want them to know that I love music and art. So about a month before Grammie Camp, I sent them 5 pieces of classical music online and 5 famous pieces of art. And then when it comes to Grammie Camp time, they get $1 for saying, they listen and they get ready, and they get $1 for saying the artist, and the name of the beautiful piece. And then the same thing with the music, the composer and the music. And they get so excited about it. They can earn $20. It's not such a big deal, but they really love doing it. They can hardly wait. They're just bursting. They're in the corners. When we start our reunion, they're in the corners, just helping each other, trying to figure out which one was which one, and so on. Everyone got everyone this year, which is right down to 5-year-old. So it's really fun. But the other thing is, I love the scriptures. They have memorized my favorite scripture, word perfect, and all the kids all the way through, because we've been doing this for a lot of years, can can repeat my favorite scripture as part of their fabric. And I also absolutely adore ancestors, because they made us who we are. We're at Bear Lake, Idaho, which is about 25 miles from where I grew up. We have a family who came from Denmark and lost a lot of children on the way. I mean, it's an amazing story. They had 6 children, lost their oldest before they left. Then they joined our church, which was huge for them. And so they left with their other kids, got on a boat, measles struck, and they had to bury their 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 6-year-old, and 4-year-old in the ocean on the way. They left the boat with one child, their oldest. And So all the kids know this story, and it is so fun but we've also done, now I've done a chart of, we have a big tree, and the picture is in Grand Magazine. We have painted with the kids a big tree. Richard and I are smack in the middle of the trunk. And then we have 9 branches. Well, we're crazy. I know. We have 9 kids, 5 sons, 4 daughters, all ours, no twins, just to get the questions out of people's minds. And we have 9 branches. And then each of those branches have these little leaves, which are the kids. And then below that trunk, we have roots. So the roots come down, and the ancestors' names are on them for 4 generations for both Richard and I as the roots go out. And it's underground. They help me paint it, so it's kind of part of them. And it is so interesting to see that them wheels turn. And then to hear stories about them, about my dad and my mom, who were born a long time ago. My mom was 42 when she had me, and my dad 54. So they were older parents. But they know my mom and dad, and I want them to know my mom and dad. They're both gone now. And they're great grandparents, and so on and so on. So we have just so much fun doing that and letting them know what's really important to me. I think sometimes as we get older, we worry about how much money we're going to leave them, who gets what, how it's going to be. But I want to leave my kids with the things that were really important to me, which have become important to them.
I love it. And I love that the idea of the legacy being more the family connection, the connection to the ancestors, because I think we can sometimes, and maybe more on the guy's side, is how much is left in the savings or the trust, what's going to happen to the cars and the house, how am I setting things up from that monetary side of things.
Exactly. And not only that, but to know enough about their ancestors to know the thing that they said the most, and the most important thing that they could know about them. My mother wrote after she had done something impossible. I mean, she grew up in a big farm. Honestly, those kids just did amazing things at very young ages. And she wrote this little thing down that said, basically, when you accomplish the impossible, it makes the next impossible thing that much easier. It does something for your very soul. And I just think, wow, that just always gives me the chills when I think that, because all of our kids are doing impossible things. And if they can carry that with them, and then Richard's father, I won't go through all of them, but his father, his meme, so to speak, is love more. Just not more love more. Love more. And then just keep that in your mind, because that is exactly what you want our kids to do. When kids are mean to them, love more. When their parents are mean to them, love more. I mean, it really comes up so often now in our conversations. So it's great.
That's fantastic. And what's a way that you and Richard will share those stories of your parents and your grandparents with your adult children, but then also the grandchildren, in a way that they don't tune out?
Yeah, exactly. Very good point. We have to keep this story short and do something really exciting. I mean, it's got to be something that's just absolutely memorable in order for them to remember it. And I tell different stories to the littler ones than I do the older ones. I mean, this year, it really meant a lot for me to tell the story of my dad, who homesteaded 160 acres. The government gave him 160 acres. He had to grow a crop. This is for the older kids. And actually, we gathered our teenagers this year, too, and just for a couple of hours, because they're past Grammie Camp. They kind of end when they go to high school. But I missed them, and I said, we need to get together. So I told him about my dad doing this thing. He went out and had dry farmed with this grubby sagebrush, had to pull it out with horses and all this crazy stuff. And in the winter, he drove the horses across the lake, 3 feet deep ice on the lake. He could hear it cracking in front of him. Anyway, he raised the crop finally, and then the Depression hit, and no one could buy it, and he had to walk away. And so it's just sagebrush again. And, those disappointments are really good for kids to know too, because they really internalize it. So we have so many stories too for the younger kids that are fun. Both my mom and Richard's mom just have wonderful stories. They were great with little kids, and so we use those too.
Have you guys been able to have the opportunity to take any of your children or grandchildren to go see the old homestead site or to see your parents' farm or any of those
Oh,
things?
absolutely. We go to graveyards. I mean, the family that settled here, Bear Lake Valley, are right across the lake, and every grandchild has been over there to the cemetery. In fact, there are pictures in Grand Magazine about with our kids hanging over my Jacobson gravestone with all my ancestors there. Richard's the same. He was born just about 100 miles away, 90 miles away, and we often go there and tell stories right there at the grave sites of those ancestors. I just think that's so important. It gives them so much to know that that isn't their blood. It's part of them. It's not just stories, it's part of them.
Well, and I think that's also something that might be unique, not just in the U.S. and in other parts, in that when you have these lands that have been settled, that you have these opportunities within 100 years, 200 years to be able to visit where your ancestors started from or settled into or whatnot, to get that appreciation, where I think in other cultures where it's been more settled and it's been around, let's say Europe for, as an example,
Right.
it's so old, it's hard to go back to, grandma and grandpa and great grandma and grandpa's land, and really have that physical connection to them.
Yeah. And of course, that means more to Richard and I than it does to the kids. But the fact that they have been there, when we had a daughter who lived in London who had two little kids, 4 and 2, and then she was having twins during COVID. So we went to London. We Airbnb'd for 2 weeks because it was COVID. We couldn't even see her for 2 weeks. But it was in the very town where my grandmother had 13 children. And the end of that story is she lost 11 of them before she died. That's so hard. These people, these grandmothers, these parents did so many hard things. But we went back to the site where she was and learned the stories and talked to the stories about the kids. It's just so important because it's just so much a part of their fiber.
And I can tell you, as a grandson, when my grandfather took me back to their old homestead in eastern Oregon, that western Idaho area, and we drove by it, and like he's, it's a high desert country, and the farmstead's not there anymore. But to see him talk about waking up with ice on their blankets when he and his brothers would sleep, and then and have that connection, that's still with me right now, even though I don't really remember it so much, but I remember him telling me about that and having that connection with him.
Yeah, it's just so important. It helps you in hard times. You just think, if those people could do that, I can do this. You can do this. You can do. We've talked about that so many times. They have done so many hard things for you so that you could have a good life, but not just sitting on your phone all day or doing nothing. You've got to do some things that are really important in life. You are important, and I think it helps them to realize that.
Especially now where I think we have so many different things that are the technology driven, right? It's not the same physical world that our grandparents and our parents and grew up in, where, like you said, it's clearing the brush, it's building a cabin, it's doing these different things, where at the end of the day you can go, oh, I put 2 logs on the cabin, so I've made progress today. Sometimes I think even with kids not having to write out papers and they're typing, where do you point on a desk and go, oh, look how much work I did today?
It's so interesting that you mentioned that log cabin, because we are so adamant about this. We have a grandfather too on one side of our family who raised 10 children in a 10 by 10 log cabin, 12 by 12 maybe. Anyway, we thought one summer we bought some land. We had bought some land up in Oregon, up in the middle of the Blue Mountains and Blue Forest, and we decided we were going to build a log cabin, so those kids would realize what the same size. So we had 50 logs brought in, and then we cut down some. There were lots of trees around, and we had kids actually skinning logs until it was like going, every time you close your eyes, you could just see those logs being skinned and doing things that were so hard. And it was so fun. We went back 2 summers actually and built this crazy cabin. And the daughters built the ladder. But after a while, they were like, "You guys, you're going to do all the work. We can work. We're just as good as you are." So they built the ladder to the upstairs loft, which was a teeny. And we had a coal stove, an iron. What are they called? An iron
A
stove.
Franklin stove or a pot stove, or yeah.
Yeah, well, just cast iron
Yeah,
stove.
just a cast
That's
iron
it.
stove. Yeah.
Yeah, so they baked the muffins every morning, and they did all that. It was just so fun. But then years passed, and eventually the logs fell over. I mean, the cabin fell over, and our kids who had been going up there said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, can we use those logs? Because we want to take our kids up there, and we're going to have them make stuff with your." I mean, we really want them to know how it is to work with wood and so on. So day before yesterday, our kids left in 2 giant sprinters and 2 extra cars, and Richard driving one with 3 children in the back. I think he could do 12. And they drove up to Oregon to that place. Every year they go up there, and it is so fun. I mentioned this to you earlier. He'll have to do a show with you sometime, because they have the most amazing time. They have made zip lines, slides, teeter-totters, and every year they pick up something at Walmart and something at the lumber store to make something work for something new. There are about 25 kids and 7 dads up there right now having the time of their lives, but they are getting a real taste of what it's like. Now, I know most grandparents can't do that, but I just wanted you to know how serious we are about that.
Wow, that is awesome. And what a great way to connect with grandpa, right? Is being out there in the woods and having that experience and kind of running amok. You know, mom and grandma aren't around to be mindful and protective and keep us alive and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And Richard went up this year. They've been doing this for about 10 years. And the kids just came back thrilled. And he stayed for one day. They took an air mattress for him, and he slept overnight, and he went through the whole thing and could not believe. He said it's like magic. It's a magic land. Every one of the kids just loves it. I mean, I know everybody can't do that, but you should know that we are crazy serious about letting our kids know about ancestors and spending time with them.
Well, that's fantastic. And it leads me into another area that I want to talk about a little bit from your perspective, because you and Richard both do so much together on both parenting side and now grandparenting side. Can you see how the grandkids connect with you a little bit differently than Richard, or is there much of a difference?
Yes, definitely. There's a difference. So Richard is called grandfather, not just grandpa or gramps or anything. It's a grandfather. So he's grandfather. I'm Grammy. But yes, it's very different, Greg. It's just so interesting. They know who to go to for what they need and for what they want. And but it's just a different thing, because we have different families, for one thing, so it's just so interesting. We This year I was missing the high school kids, because we stopped Grammie Camps, when they go to high school, but I was missing them and the young adults. We've got so many young adults right now, and I thought they need to learn about the ancestors. So they came up, and they know that I'm the ancestor person. Richard loves his ancestor too, and does beautiful things with them. But I got out old scrapbooks that I'd done for the kids every year when they were in high school for their parents, and they got that out and started started going through, and they just couldn't believe it. It was just, there was squealing and laughing and crying and everything. It made it worth all those years that I went to the store and got the film and then had it developed and put it in the books, because we don't do that now. It's just all on the phone. But Richard, on the other hand, grandfather, man, he's the one that knows how to do so many things. And he's the one that knows how to tell great stories in a way that's so entertaining. And he's the one that really is in charge of all this stuff that is responsible, that we're having fun with. I mean, it's kind of came out of his mind. And so we all acknowledge that, but it is different that with each grandparent.
Do you notice, and to go a little bit further, do you notice, or how do you connect with the granddaughters, and then how do you connect with the grandsons? And we know personalities are different and all that, but generally speaking, how does that work for you?
Okay. It's different, but it's kind of the same. We love them all just exactly the same. And the granddaughters, and actually they love playing with both the grandsons and granddaughters. They love playing with each other. Although when they know they're on a certain mission, they go off on themselves. We have a lake here in front of us, so they spend a lot of time doing that. So Richard's the lake person. I'm the land person. And I think it's kind of different, but not really. I mean, I just don't really think that one is favored over the other, or that we really make it very clear that there's no difference in how much we love them, whether they're a girl or boy or whatever. We just celebrate who they are.
That's great. And I love that advice too, because I think on one hand, we've got to allow for the grandchildren's personalities to be what they are. But then on the other hand, too, having both grandparents just be able to love unconditionally and be present during that time together.
Yeah. And every grandchild is not perfect. And they do things that are naughty. They do things they get in trouble and all that stuff,
Hold up. My wife is her head's going to explode. Karen's head's going to explode, because according to her, all of her grandkids are absolutely perfect. Now, if you ask the moms and dads, they might say something different, but
no, and we feel that way too. But we try to just help the parents with issues that we know they're dealing with. And just before, I was out with my three daughters and a daughter-in-law. Just before I came in here, we were out in the lake, and they said, "Tell us what you learn at Grammie Camp about our kids that we don't know. We don't see them in that setting." And I said, "Okay, we'll save that for dinner tonight." But it really is interesting that we do see a side of them. The kids that are so troublesome to them are just angels with us. They're wonderful. And I think they, not only do we draw the best of them, but they behave the best when they're around us. So we love it. Not that there are things that we wouldn't change here and there, but, we're so careful about not saying anything like that.
Absolutely. And, we know kids are going to be kids, and they're going to be stubborn sometimes, and they're going to be easygoing. And they've all got their own path to walk and learning, right? I mean, some of these things where we say, hey, they're not perfect. It's like, well, the kid's learning not to talk back to mom and dad.
Right, exactly. And, we talked a little about this before the show started. We have autism, we have ADHD, we have a lot of issues we have 34 grandchildren. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of issues, but it's so nice. I think maybe we're the leavening. I mean, as a grandparent, they feel like they can always come to me and if they're troubled or something, and I'll help them. I just feel sorry for them. I won't tell them they're right. I just feel sorry for them. But, they've been naughty, but they are so delightful.
And then I'm going to ask you, because the background with all the parenting, so how do you support the adult parents when the grandchildren may have a challenge that maybe, I don't want to say normal kids, but may have an additional challenge to other children? How do you support those adult parents?
Wow, they just need it more than anybody else. We have one granddaughter was born with a very rare syndrome called Bardet-Biedl syndrome, which means she's 20 now, but she's mostly lost her sight. She's lost maybe 85% of her sight. And she has all kinds of issues that are kind of autistic-ish. And my gosh, they've been so worried about this child, and they've worked so hard to do what they can to make it work for her. And she just finished her first year at Utah State University, which is amazing. And she didn't do really well, but her parents are saying, we don't care if she does well or not. We want her in that environment. So I just send messages to that girl all the time. And we're so proud of you. We are thinking about you. I can't believe you did this, or I can't believe you did that. She loves music. We pick her up and take her to concerts when we can, and she just absolutely loves it. You never know when she's going to snap at you or turn around and, be naughty, but she's, for the most part, she's wonderful. But I just think whether or not they accept your love, you have to just keep loving them and loving and loving and loving more.
I love that. And, as we start to wrap things up, I know one of the things that you guys, you and Richard have both written about is focusing less on the buying of stuff and the creating memories. And we've talked about that, but how can grandparents feel that their, let's say, their love, for lack of a better word, and support is enough, and it's not in the physical thing that they present to either the adult children or to the grandchildren?
Oh, that's a good question, Greg, because we have from day one had a policy of 50-50. If you need help from us, we'll go with 50% if you present a proposal. If you want something special, if you want special expensive shoes, or to go to a camp or whatever, and you need money, sometimes parents can just dump it on them. We just say, no, we will be glad to provide half, but you need to come up with a proposal. So this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to spend this money. This is how it's going to happen. And then, of course, we always come up with the dough. But I think it's so important to have them have skin in the game. I mean, we just don't give kids money. We don't ever give. I don't know if that's exactly your question, but I mean, we give them little gifts, but if they need something special, it's just, we think it's counterproductive to just hand it to them. We have a granddaughter when she was 14 who really was desperately wanting something, and she did a PowerPoint presentation for us so that she knew this is what I've got to do in order to get some money out of my grandparents. I don't know if that's the direction you're going, but I think money can be a huge problem with grandchildren.
It is. It's both the money side, but then also the gift giving side too, because
Yes.
I think sometimes grandparents, especially if we're at a distance to the grandchildren, it's okay, I've shown up, I've taken 5, connecting flights to get here. Here's a dump truck full of presents, right? And
Right.
that may not always be the best thing for that relationship.
Absolutely. And you might think we are really cheapskates, but there's too many of our kids to keep up with all the birthdays. I mean, if I don't have a reminder on my phone, I'm dead. This is 34 birthdays of just grandchildren, then there's all the others. But we just send them a certain amount of money. I just send if they're under 16, I send them $30. If they're over 16, I send them $50. When they graduate, we give them a nice gift. And we don't live close enough to them to be there physically to give them gifts. So it just has to be money, but it's just not very much, and they don't expect it. But it is really interesting to see how they have been our grandkids are great with money. They're so cautious about not asking for things or expecting things. We take them on trips. We provide a nice place for them to go sometimes, and this nice place where we gather for our family reunion. But they're really great kids as far as just never expecting much. And I think that's when you start giving them much. And in fact, we used to speak in Asia, all over Asia, in our heyday when we were teaching children values. And the parents in China were saying, what can we do? we give them money. We give them the red envelope. It's lots of money. It's lots of money. And our grandparents give it to them. And what can we do? They just don't need more money. And somebody in the audience just said, this is what you do. You teach them how to invest. You teach them how to invest that in your stock, comparable stock market or whatever it is. We have grandkids we have a Roth, and Richard can explain this a little bit more when you talk to him, but we have matching fund in Roth IRAs, and we'll match any kids' money that kids earn. They have to have a job or have to earn it somehow. It can't be money that somebody's given them. And they are fabulous. We've soon learned that we had to put a top on that. There's only so much you can get from your grandparents because there's a whole bunch more coming from the other end. But I do think money is huge nowadays, and teaching them how to deal with money and not to expect a lot of money from grandparents.
That's awesome. And Linda, I've had you on for a while, and we want to wrap up, but I want to ask you, is there anything about your connection to grandchildren or anything about Grammie Camps or anything that we've talked about that maybe even I haven't asked you that you would like to share with the audience before we say goodbye?
Well, I think there's got to be some people who are just thinking that your children must just be living right around you all the time. If you can do this, if you can gather people in and so on. So what about the people who are living far away? They don't live by me. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do that. You know what? We have one family in Switzerland. We have another one in Maui. We have another one up in the Salmon Islands. We have another in New York City. We have two in Arizona. So really, we have very few that live close to us, but we figured out a way to get them all here. It's changed through the years, but it is just so important to get them together. And if you can't, gosh, there's this app called WhatsApp. I don't know if you haven't found that, you're a grandparent, you don't know about that, get on WhatsApp, because this granddaughter in Switzerland is an only child. And honestly, I can get on if she's home in service, I can call her every day after school. I don't, but I call her often because the world has just become so small with all of the communication opportunities that we have. So I have just loved being in touch with these kids, whether or not they live across the street or across the world. There are ways that you can really do. And in fact, on Grand Magazine, they have, I don't know if Carrie is connected to Grand or not, but you might want to put this in your show notes.
Yep. We have Carrie coming up as a guest.
Do you? Okay, great. So
Carrie Byrne, Dr. Carrie Byrne.
Carrie Byrne. She is so fabulous. I mean, even for me, who I think I know a lot, I learn something from her every week. Like, that's a great idea to stay connected to grandkids. So I do think that that's the main thing. That and letting them know you love them no matter what. And I know some of them are really naughty. You just got to keep loving them no matter what. And that love just helps their little souls blossom. And I think that's the most important thing you can do for a grandchild.
I love it. And, my mom just keeps saying that this phrase over and over again when it comes to me. He's just going through a phase. He'll get better. He's just going through a phase.
Right. And that is true, right? Are you through the phase yet? Or
it depends. It depends.
It never ends, right, Greg? I mean, even when they're older, they're going through phases. And
absolutely.
And then you get the marriages, and then you get all those, and we have three greats. We just had our third great grandchild who just came to the reunion for the first time. It never ends. It never ends, but it is a never-ending, fabulous job to be a grandparent and to really add all the love you can to the lives of your grandchildren.
I love it. And Linda, thank you so much for being a guest on the Grand Tribe podcast. I know this has been great to learn from you about how to connect with the grandchildren, and I just hope you have a great rest of the day. And I know we're going to be talking again soon.
I'd love it, Greg. Thanks so much for all you're doing. I love this podcast. You're terrific. Thanks so much for being so great.
Hey, grandparents. If the grandkids haven't seen WikiSticks, here's your chance to be a hero yet again. WikiSticks are perfect for hours of open-ended creative fun. And here's a sneaky tip. Visit our website, wikisticks.com, and see all the fun things you can make, practice a little, and then voila, dazzle the grandkids. They'll join right in and you'll all have tons of fun, showing each other the cool and creative things you can make with Wiki Sticks.